Jaleetha McDonald, your early childhood specialist and family childcare business consultant and host of the Jaleetha McDonald Show, where we discuss everything childcare and provide a platform for early childhood educators to shine. And I'm here with one of my great friends and colleagues, BriTanya Brown. The topic of our show today is National Family Childcare Advocacy, and BriTanya is the guru and go-to person for that. So you're going to learn all about that today. So, BriTanya, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name is BriTanya Brown. I am the CEO and owner of Our Loving Village, where we provide a rural childcare solution where families are able to have high quality educational childcare in a family environment. And that really is my passion. We offer services from birth to back to earth. And when I say that, that's what I usually like to call it. Our program is nature and play based. Yes. So the children get out into the environment, learn how to take care of it, take care of themselves and their communities, as well as us offering childcare, education. We also offer birth doula services. So we don't just keep the kids, we care for the kids before they're even here. So that's what we do.
So not only are you a family childcare CEO, right? You're also an entrepreneur. You're a doula as well, right? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. The work of bringing babies into this world really lights me up. When you think about a young mother, I actually think back on being a first-time mother of twins, where I was pregnant and I felt so alone. I didn't have that village around me. And so Our Loving Village doula, which is me, I provide that sense of care and community around families so that they know that they can come to me with any questions that they have about their child in the womb and outside of the womb. And being able to have a stable place for them to care for their little ones while they go back to work has also been a blessing in this work. And being a birth doula and a childcare educator go hand in hand to make sure that children and families are taken care of.
So you would say you are a childcare expert.
Right? I'm not an expert, but
yes,
I do love the experience and the wisdom that both those fields provide.
Yes. So BriTanya, tell us, how did you get started in early care and education?
Well, I would say I got started because my other family members had kids. I was always that big cousin or big auntie who used to take care of all the babies. And I always had this dream of opening up my own school so that kids can come together, they can learn, because that was what I did. I helped my siblings, I helped my nieces and nephews have stable childcare when their moms, my sisters were at work. But it really started, I would say, before I was even old enough to do childcare. Both my grandmothers had childcare programs in their homes, and we know that the work of Black and brown women was not paid, especially back then, or it is now, at the wage that it takes to care for children. But both my grandmothers helped out their communities and made sure that the children had a warm meal, a loving environment. They were outside playing, getting along, knowing each other, and that's where I kind of saw the joy in being a caregiver, not only just for the children that are your blood relatives, but other people in your community, because you want to make sure all the kids have a good foundation. And so, doing that, seeing that leadership of my matriarchs in my family was very influential. Also, I went on to ACU, Abilene Christian University, to get my bachelor's in speech therapy, as well as political science. And so I've had a little bit of a career, I would say, in advocating for these very important years, the first 5 years of a child's life. And throughout the years, I've worked in a variety of settings in healthcare for young children with special needs, families, being able to get the resources, but I always came back to making the most impact at an early age. And that's where I found childcare.
Yeah, so that leads me to my next question. Why did you decide to start a family childcare business?
It is, I talk to a lot of people, and when you ask them why they started their childcare business, especially if they're a mother themselves, it starts because there was not any care available for them when they were pregnant. So I am not any different. I was the first time mother of boy-girl twins, and I was on my own. I had worked in childcare for years and was a director of a preschool and a childcare program that ran half day, but they didn't have spots available for my children. They were low-on workers back then. In 2018. So I was like, well, I have the knowledge, I have the credentials, I'm gonna start my own home childcare. And so I started Our Loving Village out of a nice little house that I was renting, and my twins were 2 months old, and everybody kept telling me, oh my goodness, you got twins. Like, hold on.
Like, I know.
You gotta take on more. And I'm like, yeah, like I just felt like that ease. And I started out with an ambitious 12-hour program, and then I saw the need in my community to go 24/7, where it was day, evening, and overnight programs of 8 hours. And so I kind of got into that flow and was a real resource to them. And my kids always had friends growing up. So that was always the plus when it came to that.
My children grew up in childcare too, as you know, and so their friends were right here at in the childcare space. They came to their birthday party, so it was like we were part of that community. So I totally get it. I totally get it. So earlier you mentioned that your childcare setting is in a rural area. So could you tell us what exactly is a rural area, and why is it important to have family childcare? Why is it important to have family childcare centers located in rural areas?
The rural areas is defined as any place that has less than 50,000 people, I believe, less than 5,000. They have little tiers of it, but it's basically where resources are a little bit pushed away from like the city life. So when you think rural, it's not always out in the country where I am, where we have a tumbleweed, a cow, a pig or two on the road. It can be something where it's more suburban, where they're just a little bit pushed away from the city, like in New York, when right outside of there's a couple of areas that I know that also qualify as rural. But when you think about rural, think about more of the resources being pushed out. All the resources aren't central to a community. And when you think about childcare being such a economic stabilizer, we know that rural communities don't have the resources to have all of their people who can construct the childcare business, who can staff it, who can run it, all of those things. We don't have that easily. And so when I was very young, I grew up in Dallas-Fort Worth area. I was born in Fort Worth, grew up next to TCU, loved it, but I always felt a call to the wild for some reason. So I went to the country where I found some peace of mind, and I was like, I'm going to do this. And since I was 16 years old, I've had the vision to manifest our loving village, and it's coming to fruition, and I'm so grateful for that. But it has been a struggle. There has been a lack of those resources that I was talking about, where you know your families want to get to work, but their commute to that job is 50, 75 miles away every day. And so going out there in the country, I was really facing the challenge. How do you create a rural childcare solution? And what I found is it's mostly family childcare homes that stay in their communities. It's the women who do this work because they had a situation like mine. They had kids and they had nowhere to go, but they knew that their communities could not just erect this huge center in the middle of there. So family childcare actually is what I think will be the solution to that. And I'm trying to be part of that solution.
Yes, you are part of this solution. And I bring that up because not only is she an awesome, phenomenal family childcare educator in there, she is an advocate for rural areas. So I want to say that she has made the newspaper, she has made newspaper articles, podcasts. She is talking about family childcare and the importance of supporting family childcare educators and also childcare educators period in general in rural areas. So I want to bring that up. She is a champion for early care and education. So I just wanted to point that out because I see you, BriTanya. I see you, girl. So I just want to make sure that the whole world knows, which they already do, but that the whole world knows the awesome job you're doing, not just in a rural area, but on a national level for family childcare educators. And I just wanted to point that out and say, yeah, girl, you're doing it.
We be seeing each other, and I definitely love that sisterhood we have in this early childhood education, and especially in our advocacy, because we don't often see Black and brown women like us having our voices amplified
at the table,
creating
our own tables.
Okay, so we started creating our own tables, like you said, pulling up our own seats and showing up to really transform what it means to be an early educator and what it means to bring the respect and dignity in our wages that we earn, as well as the work that we do every single day. So I see you too.
Yes. So when we're on Zoom calls in our ECE advocacy groups, work groups, or whatever, you're always advocating, like, what about the rural areas? What are we doing for the rural areas? How can we touch the rural areas some more? And then one call, I remember you saying, well, what resources are you bringing to us? So why is that so important to you?
Oh my goodness. Now I made a choice, a conscious choice to be out in the peaceful countryside. But it came with its struggles, and being in a rural area, we're a little bit more spread out from all the resources that a city would have, like DFW. Y'all have everything. You just turn the light, turn the corner, right? But out there in the sticks, I'm just talking about, I'll say, hey, we need to have more food resources for our childcare program. How can we get our meal trains going? What local charity food banks can we tap into? And when we talk about the expense of having a childcare program in a rural area, you really have to start thinking about those things. So on those work groups, when they're talking about, hey, family childcare providers need to have better wages, and I'm like, okay, but those wages are actually, they need to be not better, they need to be the best. Right? Because we're factoring in so many things, and family childcare providers deserve to have a salary of their own outside of their home expenses for the food programs that we run, and resources need to be pushed at an equitable rate out there for us. And so I always advocate for the rural area because I'm living and breathing it, and it's peaceful, and I know that it's such a need around our country, around the nation, around the globe. When we think about our areas that are not close to the cities. And so I always say advocating for them because it's the underserved population. And I think it's a really good opportunity for us to really be challenged as a state. As Texas, I want us to focus more on it. I was in the Washington Post talking about, hey, those resources aren't here, and it's not because it's not because of lack of trying on my part. These families are doing everything we can. We act like a village. If I need bread, eggs, milk, cereal for the kids, the parents are bringing it. If I need some paper, crafts resources, they're bringing it as well. And so we all come together. But it shouldn't be like that. No, and that's why I advocate for equity, no matter what setting, no matter what place, zip codes, no matter how many pigs you see on the road.
Exactly. And you said something too that really triggered me, and I'm so for, is that family child care providers should earn a salary on top of their household expenses, right? And so I just want to also say that we should be paid wages that equal the cost of quality and the cost to operate a high quality child care facility. And that's what we need to earn. So thank you so much for mentioning that. That is so important, so important.
Yes, and you say we need to earn those wages, and the history behind it is that care work, whether it's done by a woman, especially if it's done by a woman of color, has not been valued. They pay us pennies on the dollar, but the true cost of care is weighing on us. It's weighing on our families, our relationships. There's hidden costs when it comes to operating in an underfunded childcare system. We have to consider everything.
And having to be on our Texas Rising Star program now if you receive subsidies. So everyone knows to run a high quality business of any kind takes high quality dollars. So it needs to match all the way around.
In every setting, absolutely. And we can't be quality as a schools. We can't be school adjacent without school funding. Now we know that childcare is a private business market, and we should keep it that way because we want generational wealth in our families and in our communities.
We deserve it.
We sure do. Okay. I'm trying to make my situation.
We deserve it. Yes.
But we need to make sure that the wages that we get are equitable for our area, the cost of living, the cost of quality. If we're all supposed to meet these standards, we have to have the same access to capital. When family childcare businesses go into a bank, they can't get a traditional loan because we don't pay ourselves W-2 salaries. Most of us are sole proprietors. I turned myself into an LLC, and I can now pay myself as an S Corp, as a W-2 employee, but I still have a long way to go to build up that, hey, you're actually under a company, you're getting paid wages, because for so long I have not been able to do that for myself. And if I relied on childcare alone, I wouldn't be able to do it because it's still underfunded.
And I just want to point out, those are the types of classes and courses that need to be taught. We have tons of child development courses, and that we can go online, virtual. We host our own child development classes. We need to learn about how to run and operate actual sustainable businesses, like BriTanya mentioned, becoming an LLC, paying yourself, paying your staff, all those types of things, insurance, retirement. So those are the types of things that we need to talk about, and there needs to be more of. And you can come to the childcare CEO to give those classes too. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Absolutely. But that needs to be talked about. So thank you so much for bringing it up. We're not just talking about this right here, me and BriTanya, as we just for show. We talk about this every day. When we're on Zoom calls, when we're in meetings, when we're at in national meetings, when we're at state meetings, when we're at local meetings, these are the things that we talk about, and this needs to be talked about even more so. So thank you so much for sharing this.
And the way that you shine the light on those issues when you are in those spaces, I applaud you, sis. I say, I'm so glad somebody said, I'm glad I know who she is, because I want someone who knows the struggle, who's been through it, who speaks on it from experience, not from a hypothetical thing. And we need to make sure that it's authentic. Because when our lawmakers who are in charge of this underfunded system and the laws that regulate all the policies around home-based businesses being able to have access to capital, they need to hear the struggle first. But I always say, if I'm pregnant, then I'm pregnant with the struggle. And I'm about to give birth to a hustle, because I am not continuing this whole poverty-driven society
at all.
Especially not in childcare.
We don't have time for that.
I want my will.
No. So this is a great segue to our next question, right? And how has advocacy changed ECE?
Oh my goodness. I will speak on a national level first and say, in the last 3 years, this COVID pandemic had really disrupted our industry. We saw that childcare was so essential for every community that one day without it caused chaos. Lots of businesses shut down, and it's such an unfortunate thing because a lot of families were out of work, they couldn't get back to work, but finally, childcare providers got to wear this little badge of honor saying, hey, childcare is essential. We do deserve to be seen and heard and valued for what we bring to this work. And so advocacy in the last 3 years, I've seen it change to where it's actually something where we're not afraid to talk about anymore. And I would say it changed my personal life because I'm more of an introvert. I would stay on the little shy side, and I'm like, hey, I don't want to share all the things that are going on with me. Like, I move in silence a lot, but it actually allowed me to build a community with people. And we were all online, and we were all closed in when the pandemic was happening. And we're starting to get back out there now. We're starting to go to conferences and talk about this. But the really true thing about how advocacy has changed early childhood education, it gave us our voice back. And I'm so thankful for the mic I get to share with you, how I get to uplift others' voices, and especially the children and families that I serve, how I get to tell their story in a way that brings honor back to this work, that brings honor back to the connection that we have as caregiver and alongside just co-parenting in this early care work. So it's really changed and brought community.
It opened up the doors too. It opened up the doors for other family child care providers. Well, it opened up the doors for other family child care educators as well as child care owners and directors to really say like, hey, no, you called on us. And when I say you, our government called on early care and education to stay open to care for essential workers, right? And we did that. We answered that call, right?
We sure did.
And then at the same time, we're like, no, we are important. We already knew we were important.
We did.
We already knew that there was a staff shortage. We already knew that we were underpaid. And we already knew we had the best job in the whole entire world, right? And so now the whole world knows it. So it created more opportunities for early childhood educators who were called on to speak on our issues and to let everyone know what we've been knowing, right? And so now the whole world knows. And so not only advocates who have been out here in the trenches for years, hey, we need more funding, we need more funding. Other advocates, and I'm going to call them advocates because that's what they are now, other early care and education, the workforce, I should say, the workforce really is standing up and saying, hey, what about us? And not just that, they're forming their own communities of practice, they're forming their own tables, they're in their own programs to help ourselves, because I like to say, we've been helping ourselves before this pandemic anyway, right? But now the whole world gets to see that. So that's the whole significance of advocacy, and they're out there. They're out there. So kudos to all the early care education providers that are out there really working and speaking up on behalf of early care and education. Like I said earlier, BriTanya and I are huge family child care educators and advocates. And we not just, like I said, we're not just sitting here saying this, we also participate, like I said earlier. And so recently, in February, we both attended the National Association for the Education of Young Children, NAEYC's Public Policy Forum. We both not only participated, we were speakers there. We're talking about what we know best, early care and education, specifically in the family child care realm. So, BriTanya, can you tell us about your experience at NAEYC Public Policy Forum?
Yes. First off, it was such an honor to hear you set the stage for the business practices that we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Us being able to be valued as business owners when it comes to understanding how we got here in this child care crisis. It's underfunded, and our businesses need support and how to run it better. And so it's very inspirational to see you talking up there on the stage with the mic along with some other fellow advocates. Shout out to Jenna Rodriguez in New York. And being able to hear other people get inspired in that audience at the Public Policy Forum, I heard, yes, amen. Oh my goodness, they were bringing it. You were touching so many people with the words that you were saying. And I think it uplifts us to be in spaces like that together. So I was so grateful that we came there. The Public Policy Forum was talking about all this stuff about laws and we bring that life back into it when it's like, okay, let's get down to the nitty gritty. What's the real practices that we need to start talking about? And you said, look, we're going to talk about it today.
Yes, we did. We talked about the importance of family child care providers having equitable resources and being paid equitable, making a living wage, home ownership, retirement, and also being in charge of our own organizations. And also organizations investing into family child care networks, family child care associations, just regular associations. And when I meant investing, I meant like, okay, you want to work with us, we want to work with you. So how are you helping our organizations, our grassroots organizations move forward? So that way we can secure funding, that we can secure contracts, and we can like really run our own network. So it is so much more, but yes, that's my jam. I am all about the economic mobility of women in the field of early care and education. Everything I say and do is all about that. So thank you, BriTanya. And you showed out yourself. All the change makers, shouts out to the Childcare Changemakers who was there. Oh my goodness, you guys really showed up and showed out. That warmed my heart. And most of them were family child care educators.
We were. I will say that. Yes. I rolled deep with my crew of family child care educators. Shout out to Chanel, Jonna, Kelly, Danielle. Thank y'all all so much for being part of that Changemaker crew that rolled out, and all the other child care changemakers who were at the forum. It was so nice to finally meet y'all offline. You're like, BriTanya, I get your text messages. I see you on Zoom. So I was so grateful to be in the same space with y'all and understand we're at a national conference. But we need that national movement, and that's what Childcare Changemakers is. I found them online in 2020. They sent me an invite or something to a group, and at that time I think it was called something else. But I started getting involved in it, and I held my first event to raise awareness right after the pandemic hit in March of 2020. In June, I held a sidewalk chalk to raise awareness about the lack of funding in our area. We are one of the lowest paid states for the subsidy, and many of the child care providers were like, hey, we can't operate on this. Our staff can't get paid on this. And they were giving hazard pay to one area versus out there in the rural areas when family child care, as we know, stayed open. And so out of the 10 child care providers who were in my rural community out in Jones County, Texas, only 5 of us are here still today. And so we kept seeing that same struggle in that rural area. We know our families need that. It's pretty much given. And so the national movement of Childcare Changemakers allowed me to find this online community where we were focused on, hey, this is not working for any of us. What can we do about it? And some of the great people, I remember you had joined in there as well. We came in around the same time. knowing that we're always on the ground, boots on the
yes.
ground, hearing about these things firsthand and jumping in. And with Childcare Changemakers, I've been able to come on as a community organizer, as a provider who speaks up and outreaches across the nation.
Yeah.
And so if you've ever seen a text message from me, it's me. I'll be sending them myself. If you ever see me in Facebook groups, I'm always posting about, hey, how can we be having our voices uplifted through easy things to do, like clicking to call your senators or sending an email, those kind of things. So always engage with those if you feel led to. That's the only way we're going to get change. But with Childcare Changemakers, we are a group of parents, childcare providers, early educators in every setting, and community supporters who are advocating for a childcare system that is built on racial justice and gender justice that works for all families regardless of the zip code, and pays childcare providers. Look, living wages was something that we were asking for back in 2020. We asking for thriving wages now, okay? Can we get some thriving wages? We don't want the living wages anymore. We are way past that. And so this year, we are actually coming together again. I was the childcare provider who was organizing within community change and the Childcare Changemakers movement to push for something that really showed how much of frustration us early educators were under for our businesses, for our families, as well as those parents who are frustrated that childcare still is in a crisis state. And so I was talking with other community organizers across the nation, and we were saying what would actually show that we can't keep doing this. And we talked about it as a walkout for some time, and I was like, you know, a day without childcare.
Yes. So, okay. Now that leads me to my next question. What is a day without childcare? And how did that come about?
Yes, a day without childcare was sort of my brainchild after hearing from so many people. Teresa in Illinois, who was a union worker, who was a union childcare provider, and so many other people that I spoke with who were saying, hey, this childcare crisis, I don't know how we got here, but I want to be out there. I want to be mobilized. I need somebody to hear this, because as early educators, we know we can't lose our cool in front of the babies. But look, if we can get out here and mobilize and really have solidarity for one day, it keeps our fires burning, our passions burning for this. And so a day without childcare was kind of created with the call to action that we have to be outside, okay? We gotta be in these streets so that they see us, so that our movement is not just online. And so the Day Without Childcare is a real initiative, a national day of action where we come together in solidarity. We don't care what you look like. We don't care what setting you're in. All of them are valuable. All of our experiences are authentic and valuable. And we want to uplift those stories that a day without childcare could be permanent. If we continue to have a underfunded, undervalued workforce, if we continue to have quality be the markers where we're talking about this, but we don't give equitable access to capital to get to quality, and the workforce. If we don't have a workforce who's thriving, we're not going to be in a better situation. Childcare is under fire right now. And so a Day Without Childcare is an elevator style campaign where you can host an event that makes sense for you. And many people, for our first annual Day Without Childcare, May 9th last year, held events, and we had over 60 events on our map. We had over 75 news hits, medias, things kept popping up after, but local articles about people taking action in their communities.
So what were some of the activities that your the childcare educators took?
So some of the people wanted to do what made sense for their childcare families. We know a day without childcare is also like a really real threat. And so many people ask, well, what's going to happen to the kids? What will the families do? They're going to lose their jobs. Truth is, they already are. When our childcare programs are underfunded, that's already happened. We're trying to stand in solidarity and raise our platform up to the national level. And so coming together for this day, many people who were hosting action said, well, what if I do a delayed closing and they come at 9 o'clock or they come at 10 o'clock? You know, most childcare is open at 7 o'clock in the morning. So they did delayed openings or early pickups. Some folks in New York had a family day at the park where they turned out hundreds. And in Philly, they had a rally at City Hall with many of their local legislators talking and speaking on this issue about how we can fix it and what policies were in motion. but we all came together on Zoom. And we spent late nights planning, trying to figure out, reach out to our community organizations for event sponsorships to get food, water, to really bring our communities together. Even businesses on the Day Without Childcare last year posted a flyer in their windows where actions were happening saying, we support them. We stand in solidarity. Go see what they're about. And we had a QR code that scanned to the page without Day Without Childcare, and they could read more and people could sign our pledge.
So this is like a planned event. So family childcare educators, center owners, directors who participate, they take steps to let their families know, hey, this is what's going on. So it's not just like, I'm closing, deuces, bye.
No,
it's all a planned. So I want you to talk more about that, because some will say, well, my families need me, you know, and stuff like that. And you do. They do need us, right? However, this is like a call to action where you're incorporating families as well into this. So can you tell us a little bit about that? How do you plan for this actual day?
So we did a lot of things like Zoom meet and greets. But if childcares were closing down their program, like in New York, I helped a couple of advocates who were closing down in New York talk to their families. Someone in Arkansas who also closed talked to their families on Zoom. And we saw all of the frustrations come out where they were like, oh my God, you're closing. You know, what's going to happen? They're like, well, so-and-so has a surgery. Miss Sandy has a surgery coming up. She's going to be out anyway. All these kind of things. Like, we know that this Day Without Childcare is actually really about to happen. But we're hoping that you stand with us. And just as you said, our families need us. But we as early educators and business owners, we need our families. We need them to stand with us, because without them, it looks like us childcare providers just always with our hand out, like, give me more money. And that's not what it's about. We want the best for our programs. We want the best for the children and the families. And so organizing these events, we came and we talked it out. We aired out what the frustrations, the hesitations were. Many people I also know who were in California, New York, had union contracts where they were negotiating the wages that childcare providers could get, bonuses.
But hold on a second. Shouts out to California. First of all, California is doing big things, and I cannot wait to have them on the show. They got just so much. I just want to say shouts out to California real quick.
And I do know that they are planning a Day Without Childcare event. It's supposed to be a rally in Sacramento. And so definitely plug in. You can go to daywithoutchildcare.org to see all of the events on the map, as well as access those resources for our action planning calls if you'd like to host an event. If you want to learn more about it, we have Zoom meetings every Thursday and Saturday up until May 8th, and even after, where people can come and learn, how do we do this? How do we make a Day Without Childcare in our community?
So when is the next Day Without Childcare? When is that scheduled?
It is May 8th, 2023, our second annual Day Without Childcare. You can visit us at daywithoutchildcare.org again and see all the resources we have there. And you can also start getting the word out now. Many of the things that we used last year to help notify our communities were things like notice letters that I helped handcraft and translate in Spanish, where it was like, hey, we're going to be closed. We're going to have a delayed opening. If people were doing field trips to the park, they got permission slips. And the really key thing that many of my parents used when I was closing, they sent an email template that I created with a group of other parents. And like, what do we need to say to our employers? I need to take my sick day that day. How can we do this? How can we be creative and use the resources that we already have in place? And so we had email templates that sent to the employer saying, hey, my child care provider will be closed on May 8th in Advocacy for the Day Without Childcare, which means that, you know, us parents and childcare providers are in an underfunded system. Without childcare, I am not going to be able to work. I'd like to request one of my sick days or my discretionary leave, those kind of things. How can we work something out ahead of time? And so we sent those notices out as early as 4 weeks in advance, many of the providers and parents. And it created a discussion, not only on the national level, the state level, but in the workplaces of many of these parents who are like, hey, why do you keep getting marked up Why do you keep getting marked up because you're late? My childcare didn't open, or it was a hard drop off, or all this kind of things, or my childcare was closed and I had to find someone else to watch them.
So the Day Without Childcare does a number of things, and what I'm hearing is, one, it points out the significance of childcare, why we are so important and essential. It points out how our parents are riding with us as well, and that our parents are advocates too. Actually, parents are the child's first advocates, right? And so it shows also the business community. Like the business community is like, wait a minute, what are we going to do if we don't have any employees? And it shows once again the significance of the early care and education workforce. As you know, we are the workforce behind the workforce, and there is no economic recovery without us. So it's showing a whole bunch of different things and at different levels. And it's also showing community, the community of practice within the early care and education workforce, at least one of them, and that is the community of practice, the actual provider, the families that we serve, and the employers that we serve as well. Because like we said, if your employee does not have somewhere to go to work, then you don't have a job, a corporation. So it's showing a number of things, and I think it's a thank you so much for explaining that, because it's like what is it? How can I get involved? Should I be involved or should I not be involved? And you just put it out there so eloquently, and so thank you for your efforts, and thank you for leading the way in an initiative like this. And I just want to say to other early care and education providers out there, you can do it. What do you think that needs to be done in early care and education? What is your space? What is your niche? Talk about it. Why can no one talk about what we need in early care and education better than we can? Nobody, right? We are the experts. That's why I called you an expert earlier. In our field, we are the subject matter expert. So we are subject matter experts in family care. You are, if you're a center owner and director, a subject matter expert in owning a center and director. I can't tell you about how to own a center, but I sure can tell you everything you need to know about owning a family care, child care center. So, like I said, it goes back to being, we are the workforce, we are powerful, we are impactful, and we know what we know. And like I'm saying, can't nobody tell us what to do better than another early care educator. So I just want to say kudos and thank you so much. Oh, there's one more thing that I want to point out. I want to give a shout out to Texas, to all the early care education educators who went down to the Capitol, the state Capitol, on ECE Day. Let's talk about that a little bit, because we are Texans. Hey, shout out to Texas, right? So we really showed up and showed out. My girl LJ, what you guys, oh my gosh, she
was
really
phenomenal.
Did she drop the mic?
Goodness,
Man, right?
Recording this, I need to see the footage afterwards.
Right, man.
That was beautiful.
Yes, she did a fantastic job. And BriTanya, you went up there and dropped the mic too.
I did.
Tell us a little bit about your speech.
It was such an honor to speak at Texas AEYC's ECE rally that happened on March 21st. And it was raining, but you all should have seen the crowd, okay?
Yes,
when I say ECE providers turn out, we do. And we show up and we show out, because ain't nobody gonna do it for us. No one's gonna speak on this better than us, and we are there to pick up the mic. And so it was such an honor to be able to speak about the rural childcare crisis that I was facing, and be able to uplift that, hey, there's an inequity when it comes to the amount of funding that we get out there in that area, but also I have parents who are workers part-time for me. I run 24/7, and many of the families that I serve know that I gotta sleep sometime. But in our current subsidy situation, we are not allowed to offer subsidies to our parent workers. So they can't qualify. They have to have a job outside of me. And the only reason being is because I'm a home-based child care provider. So we have a little bit of a ways to work here in Texas when it comes to, hey, we need to have equitable access. If they were a center worker, they'd be able to use that subsidy. I can't afford to pay them.
I don't know. I think centers is the same.
Centers actually can. I was a director of a center. Yes, centers can have their staff on subsidy and be able to use that child slot. Now there is a little bit of best practices when it comes to minimum standards, where they suggest that we don't have the mother caring for their own children, because there might be some little favoritism. But no, center owners, I was a director, and definitely we processed several of our mothers who were on the subsidy program, and I've talked with Texas Workforce about this and hoping to have equitable access to that subsidy, because we're having a catch-22. I'm a child care provider myself. I have children. They're in my home. I don't get paid for those slots, but they take up a slot in all 3 of my service periods.
Sure do.
And I'm like, where do my kids matter? And then we have the early educators that are helping me create the 24/7 child care solution that my community needs.
Right.
And they help me work overnight or in the evening.
They should be able to go and take their child to wherever they want to.
They do.
Have, care for their child. So you're right.
They should. And so I'm fighting for a little bit of more equity when it comes to that, and a little bit more transparency. Why is it that family child care gets left behind? We get the short end of the stick every single time. How do we uplift our voices to make sure that the state knows, hey, early care happens? And it happens, and mothers usually do that work. And so when they need a place to put their babies, they should have the choice. The mothers could qualify for it, but they could not use it at my program, or they could not get it because they're employed by me. So that was a catch-22, and we're still working on that. But Texas, y'all doing a thing, okay? We got the child care expansion grants, and I know many providers who are so thankful for this lifeline to be able to use those funds, including myself, for both my home child care program and a center that I'm hoping to open up out there as well. So I'm really excited, and I know that only happens when we invest at a state, local, and federal level with the money that we need from our legislators to pass in Congress and trickle all the way down to the state. And so without that money, we wouldn't be hanging on. And we have data to prove that.
And what you just said, invest at the federal, state, and local level, and also have our voices heard at the state, federal, and local level. Anytime that we're speaking about childcare, anytime childcare is being discussed, a family childcare practitioner needs to be at that table, a center owner and director needs to be at that table, a staff member needs to be at that table, and also someone from the business workforce and the business community needs to be at that table, and a parent. Because as we said earlier, it takes a whole village, and it takes that whole community. So all components and entities need to be at that level. Diverse people need to be at that level, because 40% of the early care and education workforce is made up of women of color. So leadership at all levels need to replicate that. So we need to see that as well at all levels. And we want to say we're doing it's getting there, but we need to own this space, and we do own this space.
We do. You know what? I'm gonna own it and try to get in there gracefully. I should not be throwing bows to be at the table. Exactly. But we are definitely making it a way for our family child care educators to be valued at the rate that we are.
And I want to speak to that. I want to say that I have a special message to the early childhood workforce. No longer will we say we do not have a seat at the table. We are the table. We are the ones who make our economy work, because like I said earlier, we are the workforce behind the workforce, right? So we make it possible for parents to go to work. We make it possible for companies to earn money and run their companies, because we are caring for and educating their young children. And we also make it possible for women, right? Women to be business owners, owning not only childcare businesses, but consulting agencies, credit companies, coaching companies, all things that encompass early care and education. We do that. And it's our job to step up to the table and continue to speak. It's our job to create our own spaces where we can advocate and speak on behalf of early care and education. It's our job to collaborate, right? Collaborate with each other. It's our job to share resources and opportunities, because resources and opportunities creates power. So it's our job to do that within our own early care and education landscape in our space. So, like I said earlier, no longer will we say we do not have a seat at the table. We are the table, the early care and education workforce. Thank you so much, BriTanya, for coming on and speaking about all the wonderful things you do for a little village, and also all the wonderful things you do for the early care and education workforce. Thanks to Childcare Changemakers and for all the advocacy efforts you're doing, and all of our partners who work with early care and education workforce. We really do appreciate you. And most of all, Thank you to the early care and education workforce.